Good day, everyone. Nice to have you here. Let's start with some introductions. I'll start from myself. My name is Ivan. I'm head of publishing at FreePlay. We're a hyper-casual publisher and a developer as well. And Emma, uh, give
Me,
us.
I'm next.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm Emma Raz, Director of Commercial at NumberEight. We are a behavioral intelligence software platform that is able to use mobile sensors to detect the behavior, the real world behavior and environment of a player
And you're cutting out.
as they're playing the game to provide studios with fun.
Okay. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you both for the introductions. So I'm Andrew. I am the Global Insight Sales Manager in the Gaming and Entertainment team at Worldline Global, which is a global full-service payment service provider. And I specialize in, the gaming market.
Okay, cool. So today
Should I
we're
go
talking.
back and try to finish?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, with some
I mean,
slight interruptions.
no worries. I'm just trying to see, where did I get cut off?
In the middle, but we could hurt you after that. So uh, you can repeat it a little bit.
No, I don't know where to start. Like, if you want me to redo it, but
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. Just redo it. Yeah, no worries.
Behavioral intelligence of the player as they play the game to give insights regarding how to optimize in-app purchases, how to sell to advertisers, and so on. Short, because I don't know where the internet will go. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So today we're gonna talk about EIP monetization, and let's start with a little warm up. Let's talk about
Yeah.
2022, since we've just finished January next year, and we can make like some summarize of the year. So the year was definitely difficult. I would say for hyper casual, it was very difficult. It started pretty good. There were high expectations for this year, but it went uh, in a wrong direction, if I can say so, and it ended with a steady decrease in downloads, and hyper casual is on the edge of transformation now.
Mm-hmm.
Hyper casual publishers are changing their strategies. Developers are changing their approach to development of hyper casual games. One of the strategies which everyone is trying to utilize now is the increase of IP share in the revenue pie of hyper casual games.
Yeah.
So yeah, so how was 2022 for you? What can you say? What trends can you identify? What problems do you see? So Emma.
Me. Okay, internet. Please hold up. So the thing is, hyper casual games still performed in terms of reading the charts. We still saw them. We still they're still a major segment. However, definitely it was harder to get funding. It's not as easy to just launch a game and it suddenly succeeded, and that's probably why we're also seeing this experimentation with economies and new models coming in. Even subscription models are coming and becoming in hot, and there's more experimentation with how to improve your economy. That's kind of Netflixization, like becoming more of a subscription based model. And a few gaming is trying to see how to best do that. I think removing ads is one of the most common still subscription sort of trial, even though it's not the most effective, but it's still really common. There's a few other things that people are trying. Also, the socialization and adding more social features into gaming has also been on the rise, and trying to make it more interactive and make it more of a shared experience, which also kind of connects to the whole idea of the metaverse, but I'm not going to touch about the metaverse because I don't want to. I think data and privacy has shown to be still a major challenge, which I don't expect to change, mostly because we haven't really done enough to address them. We've seen it's a problem. We've seen IDFA loss. We've seen changes, but we haven't really completely addressed them. And things like mobile esport and mobile live streaming is still on the rise. So esport has obviously been on the rise for a while. Streaming has been on the rise for a while, but that elements coming into mobile are a bit newer and are increasing as we progress with time.
All right. Andrew.
Yeah, that was actually a great breakdown by Emma. But I think for me, what really stood out is consumer spending, right? Because in mobile gaming, RPG again sat on top of in-app spending, just like in a few years. But in terms of hyper casual titles, we still had the highest amount of downloads were hyper casual games, right? So I wouldn't say it was specifically a terrible year in terms of downloads. But also we have to take into account the fact that we have a looming recession. So in total, mobile game spending did fall, but there's also other reasons behind it apart from all the things that we just mentioned. We have to take into account the economy. We have to take into account other external factors, and also factor in, what we can control, just like the things Emma said.
What bothers me is that
I think this year will be better. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sure. So what bothers me is that I always thought gaming industry as a crisis-proof industry, and the drop in IP, the drop in spending in overall gaming is something that the market wasn't predicting, and there's maybe you can add a few words. Why do you think exactly we see this IAP drop, and we haven't seen it before in gaming, so we haven't seen that crisis has affected gaming as much as we see it now. So do you have any ideas why we're witnessing this right now?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people talked about it, and we had an abnormal couple of years prior to this year, COVID mostly, meaning games and spend increased dramatically during COVID, which was an abnormal phenomenon. It wasn't something that was predicted either.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that could have, it wasn't a natural growth or a natural progression, which is why we're seeing an unnatural decrease, because the growth before that was almost artificially made. It was made by you're stuck at home and you have nothing else to do. So that kind of shift, because of the abnormality of earlier years, we're now seeing an abnormal trend as well. I think that's a big part of it. Though Andrew also mentioned we're in an economic crisis, which might add to the sharpness of it, of coming from a really, really strong, extremely strong years for gaming to a place where gaming is maybe becoming less of a priority. One, because we have other things to do with, because we can, and we have less money to spend. But Andrew, you probably have something to add.
Yeah, Andrew.
No, I mean, what you just said with COVID being a huge spike in gaming, that was one of the biggest trends, right? During the COVID period, we saw everybody staying home. Either you were basically streaming something on your TV or you're playing video games. So the decrease now that happened naturally. I mean, it was bound to happen. Obviously, people now can go out. They can go do other stuff than just, be locked at home. So the drop was going to happen, I think. But yes, it is sharper because of the things that are happening the past year. And because of the recession, people are more careful with how they spend their money, because prices of foods are rising and everything is on the rise in terms of living. So they are more careful in where they spend their money, but that doesn't mean that players don't spend any money, right? So they are basically just more careful in what things they buy in-app game purchases and in real life.
Okay, let's add some hope to this conversation and make it slightly brighter.
Yeah.
So, 2023, what do you expect? I mean, this is an interesting year for sure, and we'll see a lot of changes on the market. We'll see a lot of transformations, just like I said before. So we're already witnessing that. But what do you expect? What are your personal expectations for 2023? I would not comment on this because I want to add some hope. And my personal opinion is that we're gonna have a lot of difficulties to overcome. But maybe you have a
Yeah.
different opinion. So, Emma, go ahead. What are your
Okay.
expectations?
Okay, so I'm supposed to be hopeful. Great.
Yeah,
I will
Give us
try.
hope.
yeah.
So again, as I said before, I don't know if that's hopeful. It's just a statement. I think the data and privacy will continue to be something that we will have to work towards, mostly because we haven't finished the full impact, or we haven't completely finished that journey. We're still ongoing it. And secondly, we have yet to fully embrace long-term solutions. We're still using mostly the old infrastructure. So we'll continue probably changing around those lines. I mean, around this area. It will be an ongoing journey, but this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that we need to kind of embrace and maybe take it as an opportunity to evolve. It can also be a positive change. It just depends on your perspective. So positivity. Then I do believe more studios will embark on a journey for higher independence, and I've seen it. More studios going and start selling directly to advertisers, more studios developing their own tech, more studios reducing reliance on external parties, creating their own stores. And those are all trends to try to create a bit more diversity and less dependency on a few players that can control the market. Probably a few more hybrid cross genre, cross economies, cross everything. We all gonna take a page from Netflix, a page from e-commerce, a page from other games, and try to create a new beast that kind of combines all of them together. And finally, new economies, new monetization, like new things coming, more experimentation, and bringing all this. I think one of the most common word is right now, like it's kind of like new source of revenue, like independent source of revenue. I think those will all come to play, and we'll play around and see what we can get. Again, to compensate over some of the drops.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, would you add something? Andrew?
I suspect there's a delay.
Yeah, it seems so.
Andrew,
Andrew,
do you think he muted us?
could be, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah, but we're asking for your opinion.
Positivity, Andrew,
Yeah.
positivity.
Yeah, there is a delay, I think. Andrew, please go ahead. We'll wait.
I think I'm glitching. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
hear you. Please go ahead.
You can hear me now, I think.
You
Yes.
can still hear
Yeah,
it.
sorry about that. Yeah. so yeah, personally, I think for 2023, it will be a year of developer empowerment, as I wanna call it, because we're gonna start seeing a transition in app stores to start selling cross-platform. What I mean by this is that payments within mobile games, so in-app purchases, they will start being served by third parties, which means instantly that this would be an increase in revenue for developers. Because as we saw in the EU with the Digital Markets Act that was passed, actually from this year, from the 2nd of May 2023, mobile game developers, they'll be able to choose who they process their in-app payments with, and they can choose to do this externally. And by doing this, they can save a lot of money on payment processing fees. And we see this also in the US. They also passed their own legislation. And in South Korea right now, this is possible, right? South Korean developers can actually choose an external payment service provider to process their payments for in-app purchases. So I see the way that business in digital storefronts being done changing for the better. And in the next few years, I see it be more optimized, to serve developers better and help them, in their journey of revenue generation.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So let's dig into details a little bit. And let's start with one of the biggest trends we see now. Something that I guess everyone is already familiar with. It's the growth of AI.
Yeah.
And I personally use ChatGPT a lot. This is a really useful tool. And I think a lot of game developers and publishers are using AI to some extent. This is already helping us to save the costs in development because we can generate a lot of art and then like things that we normally don't want to spend a lot of time on, like background arts and icons and so on. And with things and tools like Midjourney, we can generate this in an instance and in a quality that is way above like the, I would say, general level. And this is just one of the examples how AI is coming into our life. And I believe there's a lot of potential for the usage of AI in monetization in particular. And I know, so Emma's company, I believe, is working on AI and integration of AI to some extent, for sure. And this is a really interesting topic. So how do you think AI can help us in monetization, in increasing the conversions and revenues coming from the AIP monetization?
That's a really
And
interesting question.
yeah, yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, I
Emma?
can go first.
Go.
Yeah, Andrew, you can start. Yeah, you can
Should I go
start.
first?
Yeah,
Yeah. That was actually a very good point, in terms of saving time and money, right? Resources, which is two of the most important things when developing a video game. But I think up until now, in-app payments, they've been relying on storyline and, offering skins to players to kind of generate revenue. But with AI now, it's definitely a game changer. And because of its nature, that it can kind of generate an appropriate response to a question or a task, this saves a lot of time for developers with writing all this code in every possible scenario. So in the case of in-app payments, how to increase them, I think it's going to be some scenario where in the future, when somebody's playing a game, depending on their behavior in the game, that they will start seeing different pop-ups, for example, of what they can buy, of they can purchase this at this specific point of time, depending on the scenario, depending on the player behavior. For example, let's say somebody's playing a game where, I don't know, they have to chop melons to earn points. And then if they move their knife or they're chopping melons a specific way, like fast and aggressively, then they start getting a pop-up offering a big fancy sword. When this can be generated through code by an AI program, and depending on the specific different scenarios where the game can take you, because generating every single possibility in a game is very time consuming. It takes so much time and so many resources, and this can be avoided
And this can be avoided.
Yeah.
I suspect this can be avoided by using AI and other automation tools.
Yes.
Fill
Yeah.
in the
And
blank.
you just you dropped for a second, but it's fine now.
Okay.
So do you have anything to add? Have you finished?
Yeah. No, it was mostly that I think we will get to the point where we can integrate an AI program within a game and let it decide where to take the player's gaming journey. Because having to program all these different scenarios takes so much time and takes so much resources, and this can be avoided just by implementing an AI functionality within a video game. And this will instantly lead, I think, to in-app payment conversions, because a player is more likely to respond to a message when it's personalized to them. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
think.
I believe we will probably reach a point where most the biggest part of the game would be generated by AI
Yeah,
in the real time, and
exactly.
depending on the player's preferences and so on, and like the the amount of possibilities that I see with AI is really um, like frightening and
Yeah.
astonishing and amusing at the same time.
No,
So
exactly. It's exactly just like you mentioned now, how we use generative AI, right? You
yeah,
can just ask it a question and then it just gives you the response according to what you asked, depending on the scenario and depending on the details that you share. And I think this, in turn will also be implemented in video games, because why not? It'll make our life so much easier.
I think there are some like the beginning of it, of course. I mean, our solution is already like it was always AI basis. We always had AI thought of it, and obviously I wholeheartedly agree. One, with the importance of personalization and customizing things to make the message relevant to the user, the player, in order to improve conversion and how important that is. And of course, as well as the whole idea that economy is all about storytelling. Buying anything is all about storytelling, and you need to tell a really good story if you want people to convert. And the more you can put the player in the center of it and understand what they actually need, the more likely it is to be a good story. And that's exactly what we do, for example. So a lot of it, if we're looking at the immediate uses, I mean, of course, you already mentioned behavioral modeling, understanding the player behavior, where there is the external environment or the internal environment within the game, and changing the game to match that, changing the messaging to match that. That's all can be leveraged with AI, or to make leveraging it a lot easier.
Yeah,
Same with things like ability of and mental state modeling, understanding the player ability in their mental state and kind of adjusting to that. Content generation, which you also mentioned, I think it exists to a degree, and we will take all of that from changing the entire game from day, like we won't move from day zero to day like to 100, like we want to have the entire game completely generated by AI. But I
not
think
yet.
we'll yeah, I mean, not in a moment. I think we'll
Yeah,
break down those different functionalities and introduce AI until it just more and more of the game is controlled and leveraging AI technologies. I think NPCs like non-player characters are already like mostly AI, even if it's a dumb AI, it's still AI because you need something there. The more sophisticated it is, the better. But yeah, you already it's already there. It's just increasing.
I want to ask you an additional question. So you mentioned behavioral
Mhm.
uh, like patterns for the human, and I understand, for example, that your solution can
Mhm.
identify the background and understand where the player is currently located,
Yeah.
and based on that, for example, you can predict the likeness of the conversion. So,
Yeah.
for instance, if a player is in like public transport, so
Yeah.
he's probably less likely to buy something. And if a player is in, let's say, in a house at home, then the
Yeah.
likeness of conversion is probably higher. Um, do you have like can you share any specific examples how AI can identify emotions or maybe location or any other things that are relevant to this, and how we can adopt this in our strategy?
I mean, absolutely. And as you mentioned, our software, our platform can identify, for example, your external environment, and that's kind of layer number one. You can also like identify your post environment. If you just got back from the gym, that, for example, will impact your mindset, like your how you're feeling, and probably will impact your purchasing behavior. By the way, actually, when people are in transport, they're more likely to purchase sometimes. It depends on the size of purchases and the length of their duration, mostly because they're really engaged with their phone because they're trying to block the external environment. So rush hour is often a really great time for purchases if the purchase is really easy. So you can easily activate it and just you want to continue staying on your phone and blocking the external environment. So that's one. You would sometimes recommend different type of purchases or different type of level of discounts because of your environment, and whether it's at home, work, you're on a quick break, and there's 200 of those. So like it really depends on the diversity of where the game is played and the type of purchases offered. And then you have the question of who's this as a person. So one of the things you need to consider also in the type of purchases they make, who they are. For example, people that are more socializers are more inclined to buy items that help their perception among peers. So, for example, skins, customization, making the character more their own could be something they're more interested in. Unlike people with very competitive type of personality, they might gravitate to something like they want to win and they want to win things. So I'm stuck, aren't I?
Yeah, you're good now. Yeah, just beautiful. So
You're good now. Okay.
I
Socializers versus competitive people.
yeah.
Give them different items. They would want to buy different things. You also have different levels of discount you might want to offer different persona types. Ideally, you would want to create a scarcity. You want to have a limited time. You want to know when's the right time, because if you offer constant discount, if it's just promoting in-app purchases because you have more discounts, that will devalue them. So it's kind of getting all of those elements correctly, and then you can really push people to engage.
And so, as far as I understand, your solution can identify and distinct between the socializer and the competitor.
Yeah. So basically, you'll distinguish between people that is socializing and people with more competitive personality types, so joggers, people that are very athletic, and then you can see the patterns of what they buy differently. And it will start by a sort of analysis, so adding the marker, see who buys what, when, how, and so on. Then you start introducing rulings and AI and automation of there and improving it from there. And constantly, it's an ongoing journey, like anything else.
That's amazing, to be honest, and frightening at the same time.
Well, I'll try not to scare you. I can go into the privacy layer.
Yeah, let's just stay there. Just stay to that point. That's fine.
I mean, I can go into the privacy of how it's done if it helps. I don't track. I don't listen to you. I don't track you. I don't do any of that.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it's just that's something I personally am very interested in. So I'm like a lot into like behavioral theory and all these hormone levels and like the way they affect human behavior and so on. So this is why I really understand how AI can affect this, and this is why I personally feel this is a frightening thing. But this is the future and this is the progress. So we something that we should adopt instead of trying to fight it. Anyway,
I
so
can chat afterwards and kind of look his concerns. But I'm a big fan of behavioral psychology, especially in economy. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of love it as well.
Okay, so let's move on. We have a few more questions. Um, as you probably know, hyper casual is the, the most challenging genre when it comes to AAP monetization, because
Mhm.
usually games, hyper casual games, are pretty simple. They're not that engaging,
Yeah.
and people usually don't spend and invest too much time into them. That's why traditionally hyper casual games struggle to get more than like 5% of their whole revenue pie, above 5% for IP monetization. And there's multiple strategies how to we can approach to that.
Mhm.
Uh, maybe you can share a few of your personal insights into this. Why do you think, what are other problems you can identify, and what are the like solutions you see, and interesting tips maybe? Um, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because of what you just said, right, the low in-app purchase of hyper casual games, we are seeing this kind of shift and more talk on hybrid casual games right now.
Mhm.
I think there's also a panel after about hybrid casual games. But obviously, yeah, they are, let's say, a little bit more monetizable, if that's a word, because they possess a few more layers, so they're more challenging, they have a little bit more of a storyline. So I think hybrid casual is a nice middle ground. But in terms of hyper casual games, I think something that Emma mentioned a few minutes ago, something like implementing, I don't know, a collectible function, trying to create kind of a more exclusive economy within an hyper casual game, not per se kind of uh, increasing the storyline or adding a lot more layers, because that will obviously change the whole game, right? But implementing this kind of collectible function, implementing more NFTs, an NFT function, let's say, with all this metaverse and all this buzzwords from last year that we've heard, I think this will help increase in-app conversions, uh, by themselves.
We
And
have we have a problem again.
I think
Uh,
internet is just not our friend. That's still
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I think I cut
because
off again.
yeah, a little bit, but
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. So I was thinking more of implementing more an NFT function, a collectible function, a kind of exclusivity function of, oh, you can own this by purchasing it at a specific point in time in the game. But obviously, this would take some time because the game needs to be uh, in high demand. It needs to be popular. So this is more of a long-term approach, I think. I don't know. What do you
Okay,
think, Emma?
yeah,
I think that first I think that there is a chance for it, or the whole NFT, but something, or you have something collectible that you can carry on across the game portfolio, even if the same publisher, even if it's not across all of them,
Yeah,
other studios, mostly to make it give it a bit more longevity, which is what's slightly missing from in-app purchases in hyper casual game. That longevity of I'm going to play for it for a long
yeah,
time. And in the core of it, economy is something that you design for it from the beginning. It needs to be baked into the game. It's not something that you superimpose afterwards. I think that some of the problem that we have in hyper casual game is that in-app purchases are added as a secondary thought, as like, okay, oh, now we want to do this. And they're not part of the design of the game, which is why they fail, because a game is not designed to drive people for in-app purchases. An economy it's actually an art. There's a whole work around it. You can just like wing it most of the time. I think that progression, even within hyper casual game, will have to come to some degree of thought, because to drive people to make a purchase, and introducing things like special events. So maybe not completely hybrid, not complete. Maybe it's just borrowing some elements of it that can help drive. So I'm not saying completely change it, but there will be need of methods of economy design that will need to be introduced into the game. Um, to make it a bit more designed for that kind of activity. Otherwise, it will fall flat because it's not designed for it. And we'll have to see how to best do that. So definitely that is maybe not completely moving to hybrid, but it is, or hybrid is taking elements that do drive conversion and implementing them.
Emma, so I know you can talk a little bit about the principles of building a healthy economy. And
Sure.
yeah, so we're just at this point where we can dig into more details in this specific topic. So how do we build a healthy monetization for hyper casual? What principles should we follow here?
Well, there's about there are three core principles, and of course a lot around it. And the core, you start, a good economy starts with three questions. Who is buying? Basically, who is the customer? Who's the player? Will they buy? And why will they buy it? And those are three important questions we kind of need to ask. And it goes into the personalization and getting to know the users, getting to know their behavior, and so on. Then there's three main elements within the game itself that you kind of need to look at. One, the progression. So having that flow, so you want to enter people on a high, so they feel like they're really succeeding, they are really making good progress, they're amazing at it, they love it. And then start making things a bit difficult. And also not having this stable, just increase, but having a variation of increase of difficulties. So they're not constantly struggling, but they have this easier time. They're making some progress and then they get stuck. So all of that progression is a psychological tool of making people feel good, but also make them feel competitive, and they want to succeed, they want to win, and they need the extra help. And they want to do it fast. Then you have balance. So you need to have enough resources to get somewhere. If you give an employee a goal they can never achieve, that demoralize them and they never do anything. Same for players. If you give them a goal they can never achieve, they don't have the resources, that demoralize them. But if you make something too easy, they don't make an effort. They just don't push themselves. So it's kind of finding that balance of enough resources in the beginning, especially, then decreasing the scarcity. So some things are special, you can just easily get them. That's usually the real money currency. So the virtual money currency you can gain as you play, but the real money currency is a bit more scarce. So you actually need often to pay for it. There's an exchange value. You're basically creating some sort of a real world economy, the value of the dollar against the pound, against how do you create that kind of exchange rate? And then urgency. Urgency is really critical. That's why live ops have, special events have the highest conversion of in-app purchases, because think of it as like Black Friday. Why do people like to buy on Black Friday? Because it's limited time only. So people are all rushing. So that limitation, that limited time, what I talked about earlier, not just to give discounts all the time, but to make it a bit more special, that is really critical in terms of creating that need to spend now. And those are all important principles if you layer them on top of the who, what, and why. So all basically you have 6 things to think about.
Yeah, that's a huge list to think about.
You need to write them down.
Yeah, I mean,
I can send them over afterwards for anyone who needs how to do this.
No, this is perfectly fine. I mean, the list is pretty short. The problem is that hyper casual games usually are designed with minimum effort and with minimum resources involved. And this is why we're turning into hybrid now, because if you want to socialize, to monetize socializers, you have to add social features into the game. Otherwise, it won't work. And if you want to have, let's say, live ops, and if you need, let's say, battle pass system, you need to have enough content for that. And let's say, battle pass is designed for. Normally, it is designed for 7 to 30 days, So you need content for 30 days, and I would say last year maybe 10% of hyper casual games had enough content for the player to play up to the 30th day, and this is challenging for everyone. This is
Only
challenging because we cannot rely on ad monetization anymore as the primary source. We have to come up with other sources for monetization, and IAP is something that hyper casual is not really familiar with. So, uh, in order to increase it, we have um, to change our development strategies and to invest more resources in the games. This is why everyone is talking about hybrid now, and there's a lot of challenges where many developers are not ready for this, and I would say some publishers are not ready for this, and we have to learn a lot in 2023.
I mean,
Uh,
it's
What
not
do you
a
mean?
simple journey.
yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean they're not ready for it exactly? In terms of
What I mean
creating
is,
the game or kind of changing the genre?
no. What I mean is that traditional hyper casual approach is that you come up with a simple idea, you
Yeah.
test it quickly. If you see potential, you continue development of this idea. Um, Casual or mid-core approach is that when you spend a lot of time on market research, you identify
Oh yeah, like that.
setting, you identify the niche of like your audience and so on. So you spend a lot of time before you actually go into like MVP stage, and sometimes you even make various settings and different assets. You test them, you see what assets perform best for your audience, and after that you do the first prototype, then you test it, then you see, usually you see metrics that are like below your expectations, but that
Yeah.
doesn't stop you. You keep working on the prototype, and you spend a lot of time before you actually get the result. So
Yeah.
hybrid
Yeah.
is something in between.
Yeah.
You cannot simply test the game with just a prototype and based on just an idea you like. You have to do some research first. You have to um, prepare it, and uh, not every publisher
Yeah.
is ready and is basically knows how to
Yeah.
do that. So, and especially developers, they're not familiar with this approach. That's why I'm saying this is challenging.
No, it is
Challenging.
challenging, and
Yeah. So
moving to
even more.
hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think moving to hybrid is definitely, and we mentioned
Yeah.
earlier,
So even more time, money, resources.
yeah, and it's more expensive because
Yeah.
you need to
Yeah.
develop enough content to support it. I think the only somewhat of a solution is creating cross multiple games economies. So instead of having a singular game, almost having like a chapters or continuation, meaning each game. So basically, you're not selling a battle pass for a singular game. You may be selling it for combination of games, and that's kind of moving us to kind of like Web3-ish metaverse environment when you have items that are cross games and cross universes. But if it's one studio's or combination of studios combining together to do it, that might be possible. And then there, across the multiple games, you have enough content to justify the in-app purchase. But you need to see how many cross users you have, can you cross promote, do other stuff to kind of justify it or support it.
But I think this was bound to happen, right? With hyper casual games, because it's all about monetization at the end of the day. Because we need to make money to make more games. We need to, yeah,
It's bound to happen if you're moving away from an ads only, and even with ads only, if
yeah,
you're moving away from programmatic only, then
yeah,
the more complex your economy is, the more you need to invest in it.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's all true. So we have roughly 15 minutes left, and there's a few questions from the audience. And I suggest that if you have any questions, if the audience have any questions, please feel free to ask it right away. And there's a couple more questions I would like to ask before we switch to Q&A session. Um, so one other thing I believe is a trend and is something that we should be investing more time into this topic is the emerging markets
Mm-hmm.
and the potential growth that lies in emerging markets. Do you think we're at the at the beginning stage of the growth of the emerging markets? Do you think that we'll witness the growth, if, for example, for India or for Brasilia or for Latam in general? Do you think we can expect uh, some positive news because of the emerging markets, or should we focus on the traditional markets more? So, Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's a great question actually, because this idea of entering an emerging market for a lot of game companies is still a bit blurry. I think they haven't decided whether to or not, but it really depends. Because if you want to enter an emerging market, there's specific things you need to think about before you launch your game there, such as
Mm-hmm.
localization, such as making sure the game is adaptable to the country, and other things like payment methods as well. They're important, and so it really really depends. I think if you've tried your game globally in the markets that we have and it hasn't worked, then entering an emerging market would be the best next choice, because why not? It's a new space, new users, and we can spend some time to explore there. Who knows? Maybe they'll enjoy the game. Because the thing that we tend to forget is that we maybe will launch a game globally, but then we get only traction from one region of the world, and then suddenly you believe, oh, it's over. But on the other hand, there's so many users out there that we haven't touched yet, that we haven't seen, that we haven't kind of exposed our game to, and maybe they'll enjoy it, and that will help uh, in the long run. Conversions and kind of engagement with the game.
Emma?
Well, I think that in general, a hyper casual game has a relatively strong stance in emerging markets, or a bit better. I think that they overcome some of the natural limitations of bandwidth and other issues that sometimes happen. However, as we said, there's no one fixed solution to every market. There are differentiation. Last time is not India, Africa is different, and like they're all different markets. You need to understand the local market a bit, the limitations, the expectation, the culture. So you're not accidentally doing something you shouldn't, or you can do something you should if you can, because in the end, we talked about telling better stories. Games is a story format, so we need to somewhat understand who we're telling the story to. But definitely something that I do believe in, and I think it's one of the growth opportunities. Not necessarily the only growth opportunity, but one of them, and
Yeah.
it definitely will continue as years to come. As we've seen before. So we had other emerging markets in the past. They just emerged, and now they're all grown up.
True.
And we've seen that growth
Yeah.
happening there in the past. So I think we'll follow a similar pattern. And then one day when we're all grown up, we'll see other opportunities come to be.
More emerging markets.
I mean, I don't know, aliens will come and then they can emerge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to add something to this. So,
Please.
in my experience, I used to work for a mid-core game with a huge live ops part,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
we were focusing on local events,
Mhm.
things like Chinese New Year and some other local holidays. And the revenue outcome and the conversion rates by with local events, they can spike. They can really spike. And the problem back then was that we lacked resources to make all the localized versions for events.
Mhm.
So we could cover Chinese New Year because the market is relatively
Yeah.
huge. We could do some other like European countries, for example. But when it comes to, for example, India, um, we already were out of our
Yeah.
resources. We couldn't afford to make one for India, for example. But now with the AI growth and with
Exactly.
the opportunity to make localized versions much faster and much easier, I'd say that there's a lot of potential combined with the growth of the markets. There's a lot of potential to create live ops events for every country, for every holiday,
Hmm.
and with the like with an interesting outcome because we know this works. We know that localized events work, that live ops works, and now we have resources to do that,
Yeah.
and we have the growth opportunity. All right, so I really hope that live ops will come into hyper casual because this is
Me
a
too.
huge growth opportunity, and I only saw a few, maybe I would say two hyper casual games that use live ops, and this is something that we have to learn in the upcoming year. So we have to think about it. So we have some questions from the audience, and there's one specific question uh, uh, that let me read it out. So should we try to sell some packages for players in the first session, or should we wait for a while? Emma,
Um,
yeah.
so it depends on, like, again, depends on how the game is progressing and about the entire design. So it's like this is you can't really answer in isolation because you need to look at the entire economy. Most of the time, I would not say try to sell as fast as mostly like as possible. It also depends on how you're trying to design the game, what's the progression. Um, you can have it as offer. However, you probably want to get them to really like the game before you start. Like, you need to see some sort of like take from them before they start to really are likely to buy anything. But then you also need to change your ads economy probably as well to kind of match that. You can't have everything all at once and bombarding them with everything. So I'll probably say there's no one absolute. Am I frozen again?
No, you're fine.
No, no, you're
No.
good.
I never know. So if there's no one clear. I'm happy to see the game. Happy to discuss the economy if you like. I kind of love economies, and that's what I used to do. And then kind of see case by case. Should there be? How soon should you introduce that? What should be your offering? When is the best time? And kind of improve on that. Um, I know it's not a great answer, but it's really the only answer.
Andrew, do you have to add, can you add something?
I think I'm covered it pretty much, but it's all about kind of this principle of scarcity as well, right? Kind of knowing when to introduce it. It really depends. I
Okay,
think I'm ready
so
for the correct answer. I don't have anything else to add.
in that case, I'll add something to this.
Go.
So um, there's, if we simplify, there are two uh, grounds for the conversion of the user. The first one is rational ground, where we see
Mhm.
something, we understand that this is something we want, and sometimes we understand that this is something is significantly cheaper than usual. This is where discounts work, for example, uh, and we rationally decide to buy it. The
Mm-hmm.
other ground is emotional ground. So
Agreed.
when we're overcome with some emotions like joy, happiness in something, and we want to treat ourselves with something cool. For example, this is an actual example from a game we designed. So there was a boss fight,
Mm-hmm.
a difficult boss fight
Yeah.
where we won, and we were happy and like satisfied with this. And right after the fight, we had an offer to buy uh, a gun that was on the boss was fighting with, and this is something that we felt uh, we get as a reward, and we want to treat ourselves with this. So like we're happy that we feel ourselves cool, we feel ourselves skilled, and we want to treat ourselves with something connected with this win. And this offer was actually one of the most performing offers, most converting offers in the game. And the other one was designed for rational players, and it was based around a huge discount. But this one didn't really have any discount in it, and it worked perfectly because it was placed in the right time, in the right context, and it worked well. So the question, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
want something?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So the question really is in this in this topic is that it doesn't matter which day. What matters is the context. If you offer something based on a rational choice, the player should be able to understand why this is something he needs, why this is valuable, why this is how can he use it, how should he use it in the game, and the, sometimes one day is not enough for the player to understand this. So it may be not the best idea to present a rational offer right away. Um, Sometimes it is okay though, but you should be able to understand. The player should be able to understand why uh, this offer is relevant for him. And if you start showing it way too early, then you would uh, like um, dull the sense of the player, so he
Yeah.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
as much perceptive to this offer. So if you spam with offers, the player would just close them right away. Yeah, so you wouldn't want to overload with the offers. And for emotional ones, I think that the emotional context can be created from day one, and maybe in some cases emotions are stronger at the beginning of the game. It depends on the game time. So it is not a simple question to answer, but for some games you can do this in day one or in first session, but for some cases you have to wait for the right time, right context, and design it carefully.
I think one, most purchases are emotionally made. People are very emotional creatures based on reasons. Like we're all most of our purchasing decisions are emotional. So I think that was an amazing example of how emotion plays within a purchase decision. I think that, as you said, that made a real difference. Like because you won and you were elated, and that really drove you. But I think then you created that you were committed to the game, you invested in it, and you created that emotional connection, and because you succeeded in doing something hard, and that is a real driver. Which means you do need to kind of stick around, do something, progress, and then like, okay, now I've defeated this big boss. I like this was a real success, and I think that kind of emotion you kind of need to try to replicate. Of I actually achieved something. Now I'm wanting to treat myself. Or I have this emotional connection to this character, to this game, to my avatar, to anything. Um, and then it's much easier to drive conversion.
Yeah, but I think also it also depends, right? Because I think
Yeah.
what we're mostly talking about are microtransactions, also, right? Because if a player receives, I don't know, a very expensive item, let's say like 20, 30 euros, they're not likely to purchase it, right? That's when you have the rational choice coming in, which takes more time. So it does really depend. And I think, once again, we're coming back to AI to kind of help drive this process more automatically and more smoothly. So we don't really have to deal with all these different components within a game. But yeah,
I think, for example, what we talked about earlier is the ability in, for example, emotional state. And if someone
yeah,
gets really frustrated because they're stuck and you can offer them a really small fee to kind of move
exactly.
on, they might be willing. So, like, getting that emotion is still emotional. A lot of it is still emotional. I think even big purchases are a lot of the time kind of emotional. Um, I did a lot of
Mm,
like past research about behavior and why people buy certain things and how they spend. Um, a very, very large purchase maybe somewhat is rationalized because, oh, I'm going to buy a house. Maybe you stop and think about it. But a lot of purchases are highly emotional.
yeah, yeah, of course, of course. I mean, the higher the amount of money it is, and kind of the more long term the item you purchase is, right? Then the more likely you put some rationality into thinking, oh, do I need this? Should I buy it or not? But definitely, yeah.
Okay, we're actually out of time. So thank you very much. There was a really interesting conversation and a lot of insights. Thank you for coming. Emma, Andrew,
Yeah.
any farewells?
Thank you for having us, and thank you, Ivan, for moderating and sharing your own experience.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was great. Thank you for having us as well. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, you can find
Okay.
us, everybody on LinkedIn, I think.
Yep.
If
Yeah,
you'd like to connect, we're there.
everyone on LinkedIn.
Reach out.
Okay. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.